across Latin America and in Spain that we're hosting as an art exhibition in the States for the first time. It's the results of a juried art competition that our community, Dharma community, held 2 years ago. And I'm going to precede it with an exploration that will hopefully help contextualize what we're seeing and also offer a pathway into thinking about what is Buddhist art doing for us as Buddhist practice communities, as individual viewers of art, and in our own practice. And I want to start with a couple of stories. So it's pretty common. I think the sound just went. Is that right? Are you still hearing me? You're still good? How about online? Are you hearing me okay? Everyone there? Lots of thumbs up and wavings. Yeah, hi, everyone. Wow, it's beautiful to see one of the artists is here, Lula Paz. That's just lovely. And lots of other friends from near and far. Argentina, Uruguay, Sabio Miquel, who sees there. Hi, everyone. And hi, everyone here. So in the popular or the common understanding, we think of Buddhism as a contemplative tradition, first and foremost, right? If we look historically, we can see that Buddhism was also intensely over millennia a visual tradition, an artistic tradition. If you think about Asian art, the images that come to your mind are very likely to be Buddhist images. Buddhist art within Asia had a tremendous, it was a large portion of the art that was produced. Buddhist cultures were intensely art producing cultures. And that's not something that we think about when we think about what are we as a Buddhist community? How does Buddhist community exist over time? How does the community part of Buddhist community get communicated, get experienced? And art has been, for a long time, a very important part of that. Buddhist traditions are also very much narrative traditions. And that is not necessarily what we first think of when we have it transmitted to us in North America, where it's mostly about meditation. And historically, of course, the contemplative piece was there, but Buddhist values, Buddhist worldview, Buddhist ethics, Buddhist modes of relating, Buddhist sensibilities were communicated through narratives that were shared across communities that gave a shared way of understanding and that created community. So that we have across many, many different centuries and different cultures and widely dispersed geographic areas, we have something in common where Buddhists can come together from different places and kind of get each other, right? And art and narrative were a really important part of that. So I want to start with a story from the narrative tradition about the visual tradition, about the artistic tradition. And there are a number of stories that describe the first time images of Buddha were created. Art historians and looking at the images that we have, it's pretty clear that the actual first images of Buddhist art were created around the beginning of the first millennium, maybe a little earlier, maybe a little later. So 500-600 years after the Buddha passed away. But the narrative tradition tells us that's not the case, that the first images were produced during Buddha's lifetime. And that gives a lot of confidence, if that's the understanding we have, that when we look at an image of Buddha, there's some relationship to what the Buddha might actually have looked like and not someone guessing 600 years later. But also the stories that we have about the first work of art, first image of Buddha that was created, also tell us a lot about what the place of art is in the Buddhist worldview. And so I'll start with my favorite story. There are a number of different stories that claim to tell the first image of Buddha. My favorite one comes from the first time Buddha ever gave Dharma teachings to women. And there's a long story how that evolved, which is great, but this is not as talk about that, as talk about art. So we'll move forward. So Buddha is giving teachings to women. There's a servant to one of the women there, female servant. She's also attending the teachings, incredibly inspired, and she's sent by her mistress home for something. And her heart is breaking that she can't stay and hear the whole teaching. So she's running home as fast as she can. And as she's leaving, the Buddha observes her and sees the torment that she has inside, that this is her lot in life. She's a servant. She has to do her mistress's bidding. She has to leave something that she, is incredibly inspired by and doesn't want to miss a word. And she's full of inspiration and grace and joy and sadness and despair at her place in life. And the Buddha sees her going and writes, spontaneously composes a verse for her. And so as she's leaving, she's filled with this, everything that would mean, that you so much want to be there and you're being sent away, and the person you're being sent away from and want to hear more from dedicates a verse to you. Just, she's full of whatever we can imagine she would be full of. And she's rushing home, desperate to get home and get back. And she ends up coming between a cow and her calf and getting kicked by the cow and dying on the spot. And she's reborn in Sri Lanka, an island off the coast of South Asia, far, far away, where Buddhism has not yet been established. It's the lifetime of the Buddha. She's born in a family there, and she hears one day the recitation, chanting of Buddhist sutras, which she would have heard when she was in her previous lifetime. And it awakens some latent resonating memory from her past life. And she seeks out the sound. And it's a group of tradesmen, of merchants, who are trading between Sri Lanka, going back and forth between central India and Sri Lanka. And she talks to them and asks them, what is this? Who is this Buddha? Tell me about him. What does he teach? And when they're leaving, she sends a letter to him. She just still has this longing. She didn't get to come back for the teaching in the past life. She sends a letter to him. And the Buddha knows exactly who she is from her past life. And I'll just name her because it's not that often that women are named in Buddhist narratives. Her name is Muktika. The reborn woman is named Muktika. And she has sent this letter to the Buddha, and the Buddha knows who she is, and he calls his artisans together and says, I want you to make a likeness of me. I will stand against a canvas. We can cast the light against the canvas. And the best artists in the land come together and they make a painting, and everyone says, yeah, it looks like him, but there's something missing. And so the artists keep working on the likeness, and they have him right there in front of them. So they're trying to perfect it, and something is missing until the Buddha himself emanates his energy onto the canvas. He energizes something about his presence directly onto the canvas. And then everyone says, canvas rather. And everyone says, that's it. And that is sent to her in Sri Lanka. And that is a way that she is able to continue her relationship with the Buddha. So that's one canonical story about the first time an image was made. And so that already tells us a lot about what might be going on with Buddhist art if we think about it. Another story, there's also a woman involved, but she's kind of absent. Buddha's mother passes away 7 days after he's born and is reborn in one of the Deva realms. She's reborn in another realm. And the Buddha has never seen her since he was 7 days old. And he longs to go and see her and to teach her the Dharma so that she can liberate herself. She can free herself from suffering. So he leaves this earthly plane and goes off to the other realm for 3 months during the rainy retreat. There's a 3-month rains retreat every year that the monastic communities did. And he's gone. There's no Buddha around for the community to engage with. And the king whose land one of the lands where Buddha has wandered and has a very important community of followers is the land of Vatsa, with the very important capital city. So India at that time was in a process of urbanization, very early process of urbanization. One of the major cities in the Indian subcontinent then was called Kaushambi. So this is King Udayana from Kaushambi. So he's a big king with a big empire back then in a big city, and the Buddha's gone. And he longs to see the Buddha. So he calls artists who themselves have seen the Buddha and says, I need an image, I need a likeness of him. I miss him too badly. And so out of sandalwood, a second image is created and is placed in the central seat where Buddha normally would be teaching from when he was there. So it's a representation that takes his place during his absence. I just kind of want to have those foundation stories echoing in our mind as we think about what Buddhist art has done over the centuries for practice communities and what it could be doing for us now. And I'm going to share a set of slides for most of this talk, because you want to be seeing the art. You don't really want to be seeing me. That's not it. So before we start looking, so you can full screen, it's a little better. So one of the first things that we should acknowledge before we start looking at what common themes we might find in Buddhist art and how it worked in Buddhist communities is, first of all, there is an incredible range of aesthetic diversity. Different painting styles, different color palettes, different artistic sensibilities over time. And so just to take a very quick tour of the Buddhist world, on the Silk Route, you see a very distinctive palette that's quite common in that particular place. This is showing audience members. They're all watching Buddha, who's actually you can tell where the Buddha is by looking to this. Buddha is to the left. They're all looking in towards him. From China, this is Buddha Amitabha, who's descending from his realm to receive the dying, descending from Sukhavati. You see very distinctive palette, very distinctive feeling. I'll speak loudly because this speaks for itself. So Tibet, very different visuals. Continuing on to Thailand, has its own artistic tradition that looks very different. Japan, these look like they might have nothing to do with one another. Korea. Just before we start looking at things that are shared, to recognize what is shared manifests in ways that look very, very different from place to place and from time to time, just to acknowledge that. And I'm not going to be focusing here on the local style, artistic styles, painting styles, or a historical review of all the differences. I'm going to be looking at things that are shared primarily in broad terms. And so some of the things that are shared is thematic. The images that we just saw have one thing in common. They are all images of Buddha or the audience that is listening to Buddha's teachings. So thematically, it is very centered on figures, on sacred figures. It might be Buddha, the original Buddha Shakyamuni. It might be other figures who have been enlightened over time, but thematically, that is very, very common. It might be figurative art, it might be narrative art, but it is going to be talking about enlightened beings primarily. Compositional, we're going to start to see, and I want to turn to some images to look at that, and also iconography. There is a shared iconography that is legible to people over the millennia and over all the different places that we see Buddhist art. There are differences, but there are many, many iconographic features that are shared. And also what art does for Buddhist practitioners and for Buddhist practice communities. And I want to just, for those of you who do practice Buddhist meditation or practice Buddhism in whatever modality you practice in, I would love to hear how you use art, or what you experience art doing for you in your practice. What is the place of art, Buddhist images in your practice? Just a few, and people online, I don't know, maybe you want to write something in the chat, and I have the Zoom on maybe someone can read it out if there's anyone else who's on Zoom right now. Does anyone have Buddhist images in the place where they practice? How do you interact? What does that do for you? Reminds her of, yeah. I can repeat it while they're getting the mic set up.
I would say that
Here we go.
Piece, and then I have things from nature, because I'm very much someone who loves nature and wants to see it preserved. So I also oil paint, but I don't paint any Buddhist images. I paint nature. I also do classical painting of people, you know, the formal painting. And it's, for me, art and nature combined together is just so powerful. Nature is based on art. If you were to examine seashells and flowers and so on, the unfolding of flowers, the unfolding, the way seashells appear, they're all falling along some type of numerical pattern that releases their beauty. Some people, you know, I don't know if you're familiar with Fibonacci numbers, but
yeah, I'm kind of curious what the Buddhist art that you engage with does for you.
All right, so I just feel a sense of presence when I'm looking at something like that, like Tara.
Presence.
Yeah. Presence.
Yeah, that's.
Sorry.
Oh no, that's okay.
I have love art.
Can feel that.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and for me the images bring connection, a sort of intimate connection at that moment.
So intimate connection. Yeah.
We have someone online.
There's someone on
Yeah, let's have one or two more people.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
So
Oh, yeah.
Elizabeth, we're not able to hear you just yet here, and I think maybe it might work better. We're having some technical problems, I think, with the screen. Maybe if you could write it in the chat and I can read it. Oh, can we do it now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I use the images that Lama Liz taught him, the Divine Masculine, as well as white Tara and green Tara, using Tonga. And the visualization, I practice with it in different ways. One way is to visualize fully embodying, beginning from the heart space and fully embodying. For example, the white Tara is usually the particular one that I go for that practice. And then also the particular qualities of each of the archetypal images that I have in my sacred space, and that I turn to the particular images for particular qualities and seek guidance as both a kind of ancestral, almost a benefactor, in calling on those images as benefactors and support and guidance.
Thank you. So we've touched on a couple. Just want to flag them. Presence, intimate connection, embodying and using as an aid for visualization. Visualization externally and imagining oneself or embodying oneself qualities. So those are, I need to share again. Yeah, can we put it back on? Yeah. So looking across time, looking across communities. So these are some very common ways that Buddhist art has been used. And we can see that in the story. It established the presence. It establishes a presence in your space for your practice, for the sacred beings that you want to engage with. And it allows us to cultivate a relationship with them, which is why very often we're making offerings. We are engaging, we are cultivating that relationship through our interaction with images. We also will see as we go through the next slides that Buddhist art is communicating a shared worldview. And it is communicating something about how relationships, social relationships, are ordered in that world. That is signaled to us visually through art. And I want to start with this image of Buddha Amitayus. This is from the Vajrayana tradition, Tibetan Buddhist tradition. There's nothing here that would be particularly surprising or startling. People who've been naturalized into this visual worldview can feel more or less like they know what's going on. There is a central figure who is a Buddha. Even if you don't know which Buddha it is, that is going to be a Buddha there in the center. It's elevated from the ground, seated on a shrine, seated on a lotus. And there are other figures surrounding him. The other figures surrounding him are much smaller. Some are smaller than others. The two on either side are bodhisattvas. They are turned inwards. So that is enhancing or stressing that the central figure gets all the focus, as if we needed any more enhancement. But that's not just visually the center of the world, but we can see the center of attention within the world in the painting is the Buddha. And if we look up top, people are leaning forward and looking down towards the Buddha. Those above are a bit smaller than the ones on the side. So we're already understanding something about the relative importance, the relative focus, the centrality just through this visual medium without anyone giving us any other teachings about what's what or who's who. Now, the contrast with that, and let me just go back and underscore one other thing. There are some bits of something that look like foliage here and there, but this is essentially a built environment. It is a human architected space. And the contrast with that is a piece of art that comes from, it also comes from Tibet. It's associated with the Mahasiddha tradition. And immediately we'll see, and I just want to underscore, it's in the Museum of Fine Arts. I tried to pick some images that would be at a museum that you might be interested in visiting. They have an amazing collection of Buddhist art, really worth visiting there. And so these are 4 Mahasiddhas who are important in the Mahamudra and also in the Sakya practice traditions. And you'll see here, there's no central image. There's much more natural landscape. And this is a little bit to the margin of what we normally see in Buddhist representations. This is less typical. And that is reflective of what the Mahasiddha tradition is doing and how it's situated in relationship to mainstream Buddhist practices. There are 4 of them. It's a very natural environment. However, when we look closer, this is Virupa, who's the Mahasiddha who's most important in the Sakya lineage. He's there with his consorts. His consorts are teeny and tiny. They're women. They're in subservient positions. One is serving him water. The other is holding up his umbrella. And we don't need to be told much about the place of women in this world. It's signaled to us visually. So these are some of the things that the Buddhist art is doing. It is communicating a shared worldview, and it is ordering relationships in a way that is patriarchal. Not just in the sense of men being larger. There are patriarchal relationships among the men. One is the important one, the big figure. The others are serving that central figure, are less important, and there's a hierarchical social ordering that has a patriarchal figure at the top. So that's just something that is being naturalized and communicated to us. And feminists will make this complaint about religious traditions that they naturalize gender inequality through lots of ways that are very hard to combat because they're just so, they're subtle, they're visual. No one is making an argument. Women are smaller, women are subservient. It's just sort of presented there. And so that's just the sense of the world that you're in. And this is a shared worldview. And so this is just for us as we're walking through Buddhist practice to notice these are ways in which certain modes of being and certain things that we might not want to be internalizing are actually being communicated to us. And we do not have to internalize them. But in order to be sure that we don't, we need to notice when they're working subtly on us. So another thing that Buddhist art is doing for us, it is generating experiences. And that is something that I think what some of the comments that you made is it's generating an experience of presence, an experience of intimacy, an experience that you can embody yourself. And there's a very particular theorizing of how it does that in not just the Buddhist, but the Indic world, the Sanskritic world, that theorizes, let's come down here. It theorizes the impact that images have on us through a concept called in Sanskrit darshana, or darshan, which we might have heard more commonly. It's in Hindi. And the idea is that when we see something, it changes us. We are changed by what we see. And apologies for bringing it into this space, but that is the underlying principle also behind pornography. Seeing it does something to us. It generates an experience in us. The idea with Buddhist art and also Hindu art is that when you see sacred images, it is touching, it is activating, it is awakening something resonant in you. And so Buddhist art is, viewing Buddhist art is considered to wash you with grace, in Lama Willa's terms, or send you waves of gifts, which is the literal translation of the Tibetan term for blessing, Jin La, waves of gifts. So when we see art, we are in a position to receive waves of gifts. The art is giving us visually through this, such a powerful faculty for human beings, the visual faculty. By seeing something, we are having experiences generated in us. And so we have composition. The composition is helping to do something. Figurative and narrative are two important ways in which something is being communicated to us. And communication is a way of awakening or moving something in the listener or in the viewer, but also body language. The body language of Buddhist images is communicating something to us at all times. And basic elements of body language are legible almost universally across Buddhist communities. And it is something that if you are Buddhist practicing in Mongolia, or you are Buddhist practicing in Argentina, if you have learned this idiom, you will share a visual idiom. And Buddhist art from widely different places will be legible in broad terms. There are elements of Buddhist iconography that are communicating something specific. And the most common, or one of the first modes of communication we can see here, just as an example of body language. This image of a Buddha who's standing, we can see he's slightly in movement. The hip is slightly shifted. The weight is slightly shifted to the right hip. His foot is slightly lifted. He's moving towards the person to whom he's communicating something. We might not yet know what he's communicating with his hands, but he is moving towards the speaker. He is communicating something. He's communicating in large part through mudras. And mudra is a Sanskrit term which means gesture, a significant or signifying gesture. And mudra, one place that, just to give a sense of what we might mean expansively by gesture, the Sanskrit term for ocean is that which has mudras. So the ocean is offering us gestures all the time. So just to have this more expansive understanding of mudra. And I want to take a little bit of time, and we may not be that obedient to the limits of time here. There are 6 mudras that are fundamental across Buddhist visual cultures. And one of the things that you will be able to start doing after we've gone through them is to walk around and look at the art here at Wonderwell, or look at the art that you might have in your home, and start paying attention to the hand gestures, because they are trying to tell you something. They are telling you something. And when we think about darshana or darshan as a fundamental theory in artistic production, and thinking about what art is doing in the world, what we have is something quite distinctive, which is the focus of artistic production is on the viewer. The art is trying to do something to the people who see it. It is not artist-centered. Buddhist visual cultures are not artist-centered. The number of artists that an art historian could actually name is very few. Buddhist art is generally not signed historically. Now it is often. But it's not centered on the artist. It's not focused on what the artist's vision is, or what the artist sees, or the artist is expressing. It's focused on what it can do to the viewer. That is what darshan means. Now, that doesn't mean that artists are not, incredibly creative in creating works of art, but just the general framework that is enlivening Buddhist visual culture is it is about what is being done to the Buddhist community that's practicing or the individuals who are engaging with the art. So that's just something to sort of keep in mind as we're working through. So the first gesture, which is the most common mudra or gesture that we will see, and this is going to be a little bit of a Sanskrit class, sorry, that's just me. Bhumi means earth or ground, and sparsha is touch. So the earth touching mudra, which is the most commonly found mudra or gesture in Buddhist art, just numerically, it is Buddha reaching down to touch the earth. And this is linked to an important narrative that at the moment of Buddha's enlightenment, when he was just breaking through the last residue of ignorance during his long night of meditating under the Bodhi tree, his night of awakening, in the last moment, obstacles arose. And those obstacles were called Mara, and they're understood to be personified in a figure named Mara. And we'll see some images of this moment, of that narrative in a moment. And Mara came and tried to generate doubt, generate distraction, and basically knock the Buddha off of his path. Obstacles, right? That's what obstacles do. They block us or make us leave our path. And at that moment, what the Buddha did, he didn't argue, he didn't have anything that he needed to say. He reached down and he touched the earth. And it's really worth taking into our meditation practice and thinking what that might mean. And there are some narratives around it. He reaches down to call the earth as his witness. And in different narrative traditions, she arises from the earth and bears witness to what he's done. So the earth touching gesture is a very early gesture that places the earth as central in the enlightened experience, that the earth has to be the witness in order for enlightenment to be complete. And the gesture has, and I would like to invite everyone to actually do the gesture so we have that kind of somatic experiences with the right hand almost always. And he's just reaching down past his right knee to touch the earth. The palm is towards us, fingers are down, and we'll see artists sometimes have the fingers separate, sometimes the fingers are all together. But just imagine ourselves seated, cross-legged, meditating, and suddenly the self-doubts arise. We're there, we're really there. We are seeing the truth, and there's still some residue in us that can't believe that we're doing it, or whatever it is that we particularly have, and we just call on the earth to stabilize our attainments, to mirror back to us, yes, you know, you're not just in a world of your own, you're not just living a fiction. Yes, I am here, I have seen everything you've done. Yes, you have arrived where you think you've arrived. And so this is a very early representation of the earth touching gesture. And this, now we're fast forwarding 5 centuries, it's still being represented. We can see on the top, we have representations of Mara seeking to confuse him. They're sort of pictured as monsters. And one thing to note in hands, because mudras are such an important signifying feature of Buddhist art, many times we will see hands are drawn disproportionately large to help draw attention to the mudra. And so if we look at this next image, that hand is pretty big. Compared to the chest, his hand is, you know, is the same distance as neck to bottom of ribs. And Thai tradition, let's look a little bit closer. Again, lots of grace in that hand gesture. and it's reaching down to touch what we can imagine is the earth. Now, here again, this is from Myanmar, same century as what we just saw, but we start to see often that images of the Buddha lift him above the earth. Visually, Buddha starts to be separated from the ground, from the earth. He's being elevated socially and physically. He is higher. And here we have a very different way of representing the hand. Again, the hand is quite, fingers are very long. There's a lot of visual attention that's given to that. And this is the moment just before he touches the earth. And so the story that I've just mentioned is being narrated in that gesture. That gesture is reminding us of that moment. It's reminding us of the power of the moment of first awakening, that first breaking through to enlightenment. It's reminding us of who else was present, even visually, they disappear. So Buddhist art, even just in a mudra, but often in other representations, it's storytelling. There's a lot of narrative art as well. And narration can be done also just through a mudra. And so one of the art themes that we see, this looks like figurative art of the Buddha, but it is actually narrating a key event, which is exactly this event, when Buddha attains victory over Mara with the support of the earth goddess. And so we see, you can see the earth touching gesture. His hand is there. He's reaching past the lotus. So he's seated on a lotus. He's again elevated from the earth by being on a lotus. Those are arrows that are surrounding him. He's being attacked by the army of Mara, which is one way that this is represented. And when we think about that, this key moment, narratively, the earth goddess is crucial. She's required for him to pass to the moment of enlightenment, but visually, her role becomes very, very small and peripheral. So that's her all the way down there. And when we look a little bit closer, that is her. She's only the top part of her body is depicted emerging from a lotus in the earth. And we can see no attention is given to her. No one is looking at her. She's really, her peripheral quality is being signaled. And very often in Buddhist art, she's making a gesture of reverence towards the Buddha. So that is just to start to track what's going on. And so here we see that same scene. To the right is Mara. He kind of looks like a tough guy, like a bully, leaning on one of his women. The Buddha's on the other side. At the Buddha's feet, so there's Mara right there. There's the earth goddess. So Mara has his women and the Buddha has the earth goddess. But the earth goddess here is kneeling before the Buddha. She's much smaller and she's paying homage to him. She's prostrating to him. So this immediately establishes a very strong relationship between the humans or the Buddha and the natural realm. An order has been established visually right here. We do see the tree behind. So that is the Bodhi tree. And this was very early. This was an image from what's now Pakistan, but they knew what Bodhi trees look like. So sometimes we have a representation of Bodhi tree that if you look at it, that's not actually a Bodhi leaf. This is definitely a Bodhi tree. And so there is the earth goddess kneeling. And then later art that is depicting the conquering of Mara sometimes just makes it a struggle between the Buddha depicted above and Mara being conquered below. And so this is just one thing for us to track when we're thinking about what is being communicated to us and what order of relationships, not just among human beings or human-like beings, but also our relationship to the earth. What is sacred is elevated above the earth. It is separated from the earth, visually. And that was from Bangladesh, 9th to 10th century. Around the same time, we can see the same thing happening in East Asia. This is another, these are illustrations of discourses of the Buddha. And so we see here everyone is elevated, all the sacred figures are not touching the earth, they're elevated above the earth, and they're elevated different distances. So that's the Buddha with the big circle, and the smaller circles are the bodhisattvas and the Shravakas listening to his teaching, probably Shravakas. And so that was the earth touching mudra. Next is the gesture or the mudra of meditation, the dhyana mudra. And so I want to just, before we look at it, just for that kind of felt sense, we're taking the one hand, it's usually the left hand, but not in all situations. Sometimes the order is reversed. Left hand, palm up, right hand, palm up, one resting on top of the other. And we'll see in the art, sometimes the thumbs touch, sometimes they don't, sometimes they're just resting. There's a lot of variety in the very specific details, but having the two palms together signals to us Buddha is in a state of meditation, or whatever sacred figure or whatever figure is in a state of meditation. And this is the mudra that we do when one of the gestures that we do when we're meditating. So we are echoing Buddhist art. We are participating in a millennial tradition, contemplative, visual, narrative, philosophical, etc., where by putting our body in a certain form, we are participating in a community. And one of my interests in exploring Buddhist art is thinking about, how is community formed? How do we stop experiencing ourselves as meditators whose practice takes place on our cushion, who have an intimate relationship with the Buddha and maybe with our teacher? How do we go from there to experiencing ourselves as a community? And this shared visual language, the shared experiences that art can create, but also adopting mudras that we have had transmitted to us and that we share with vastly different communities. So our somatic experiences are shared. So dhyana mudra, dhyana means meditation or concentration. So it's the meditation gesture. And we can see it from very, very early on. This is Gandharan art. It's very much influenced by Greek artistic traditions, because the Greeks had conquered that area and left communities there, and their artists were there, and there was a lot of interaction. This was around the turn of the 1st century, right around when the first images of Buddha are being created, and his hands are in the meditation gesture. See that right there, very early. And fast forward, move to a very different geographic space, go to Cambodia, 12th century. And we can see the hands are also placed one on top of the other, palms up. This is the meditation gesture. And just to start tracking some of the distinctions in China, this ivory sculpture shows the thumbs lightly touching. This is from Tibet. There's a tradition of iconography, of sketchbooks to help people get the iconography and the proportions right. Then we go to northwestern India, to Ladakh. So this was removed from the monastery and taken out. We can see that there's a very different way of having the thumbs. So there's a lot of variety in the details, but the basic idiom is shared. This is one of the few artists whose names gets preserved. This is the 10th Karmapa, Chewing Dorje. He was a very, very productive artist. They say he produced one piece of artwork every day throughout his life and just gifted it. So you see his fingers, his finger and his thumb and index finger are forming a circle. And we also see often just one hand in the meditation gesture. And most often, we can see here, it is going to be it is usually the left hand, but it's sometimes also the right hand. And so her different fingers are gesturing, some are holding implements and they have different mudras. So that's something we'll start to see where different hands are expressing different gestures. And now we notice the earth touching gesture is accompanied by the meditation gesture, which makes perfect sense because Buddha's moment of awakening came while he was meditating. So the combination of those two mudras just reminds us, your moment of awakening is going to happen while you're meditating, in a meditative state. Your posture might not be like that. You may be walking, but your mind will be in a state of meditative absorption when you fully awaken. And you will need to remain grounded on the earth while that happens. So those two gestures are reminding us of those two fundamental aspects. And there's a close-up. So that was the meditation gesture. Next, very common is the teaching gesture. And anyone who spent time in South Asia and has listened to lectures or talks by Indian teachers, you will see there's a lot of this. And then in the first place, and then in a second place, and then in the third place, and it's like this. And I was just the other day, we were recording Lama Willa giving a series of teachings, and she kept doing this, and I kept a poker face during the teaching, but I wanted to laugh that it just, when you've trained in an Asian context, this is just sort of very natural way of either keeping your place in a presentation sometimes or just communicating. And so the Dharma Chakra Mudra is the teaching mudra. Dharma, we know what that means. Chakra means wheel. And literally, it's a reminder that in Sanskritic terms, the description of what you do when you're teaching is you're turning the wheel of Dharma. So there's a wheel, Dharma is moving through the world like a wheel, and you're just giving it some energy to keep it turning. And so here we have very early on that idea of teaching as turning the wheel was represented very literally. There was a wheel depicted next to the Buddha, and he was turning it. And how do we know this is a narration of that moment? Because the first time that the Buddha taught, the very first discourse, which is called the Discourse of Turning the Wheel of Dharma, that's the very first teaching he gave it to 5 friends that he had first been practicing with. The group of 5 friends were the first audience. They became the first Sangha. And there were also some interlopers who were the devas or gods. That's the one standing there with the curly hair and a stick. The others were ascetics and had no hair. So we know this is when there are 5 people and maybe some gods or maybe just 5 people with ascetic aspects. Those are the 5 teachings, but the absolute key are the deer, because the first teaching took place in Deer Park. So when you see a wheel and you see deer, that is a reminder of the teaching of Buddha. It's like an echoing back to that very first moment. And unlike Jesus Christ, who had a relatively short teaching time, the Buddha taught for 45 years. And so and just to continue on, so again, we have the 5 friends are to the left, and the devas, the divine or celestial beings who came to hear the teaching, are to the right, or to our right on the image. There's a wheel being turned, and there's the deer. So once we have this visual idiom, we will know immediately what it is that we're seeing. And so teaching mudras often involve both hands, but not always. And here we have a frontispiece from the Prajnaparamita Sutra. We can see Buddha's teaching. And there is also a tradition, so you can see there are very different ways that the hands might be joined. The thumb is often making a circle with one of the fingers. It's not always the index finger. And there's a map for different cycles of teaching depending on which finger is touching the thumb. But it's not universally observed, so it's kind of not really worth trying to memorize. So just Dharma Chakra Mudra. And one other thing to note is that sometimes in Indian or Tibetan art, the palms of the hand may be colored red. It's a visual tradition that was developed during the Pala dynasty in northeastern India, sort of 8th to 12th centuries, kind of late, and kind of like relative to us a long time ago. And that draws attention to the mudra. It draws attention to the hands. And that was continued often in Tibet. This again is at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And we see his hands are colored red, which helps to draw attention to the teaching mudra. And just one more example from Korea, looking at it from different angles. It's just a place where, again, the hands are often very large, but it's a place where a lot of grace and artistic attention is directed. So that was the Dharma Chakra Mudra. Now, the mudra, a mudra that many of us just do as part of our interaction with teachers or with art or with other representations, is we join our palms together in prostration. And that is called the Namaskara Mudra. Kara means doing. Namas is obeisance, prostration, homage. It's a common greeting in India, namaskar, right, which means I make homage to you. Namas is to lean forward or to prostrate. It's also sometimes called Anjali. We'll hear that term sometimes. And so the Buddha almost never will be represented doing that because the Buddha is the object of prostration universally in Buddhist worlds. But we will see many other beings around the Buddha oriented towards the Buddha making prostrations to him. And that is another way of reinforcing that our Buddha is worthy of prostration. And here we have Indra and Brahma, two important Hindu gods. This is a way of also ordering the relationships between the Buddhist world and the Hindu world from a Buddhist perspective. Your chief gods make prostrations to our Buddha. Don't need to say another word. Everything clear? Yes, everything is clear. So they also, these representations, social, the ordering of social relationships is also political, of course, always. And so there they are a little bit closer. And here again, we have the a representation of someone standing up, that figure in white, standing up from among the audience, making prostration. This is where the Buddha went to teach his mother when he left an empty throne on the earthly plane that inspired King Uddiyana to make an image of him. Where was he going? He was going to this realm where his mother had been reborn. That is his mother making prostration to him. And there's this incredible moment of an exchange of gaze between the two of them. This is mother and child. And Buddha is explicitly described his visit to her in that realm as repaying her kindness to him as a mother. He's repaying her birthing of him by gifting her the Dharma. And so just another representation where we have Vimalakirti, who's the figure seated on the bed / throne to the right. His hand is in a teaching mudra. We have to the left is Manjushri, very important bodhisattva who's making a namaskara mudra. He's making the prostration gesture to Vimalakirti. This tells us even though they're kind of equal, each of them has their throne, they're slightly different heights. This tells us Manjushri is receiving teachings and Vimalakirti is giving it. There's Vimalakirti in the teaching mudra, and the audience behind him is also making prostrations as they listen to the teachings. Now, this is a very important and really just incredible image of Green Tara. And we'll come back to her mudras in a moment. But let's look underneath her right palm, the palm that's down towards her knee. Underneath, there's a little monk who's making prostration to her. And there we see, apart from all the other, the size imbalance, this is showing us she is the object of his reverence. And so that is one of the key gestures that we see in Buddhist art. Let's just come back to this image and see how multiple mudras together in a work of art form a complete communication. So we have in the center Buddhist teaching, in the audience, many are making prostration mudras, but some of them are also doing a teaching gesture. And so this is telling us among that audience, some are going to transmit these teachings themselves. They are lineage holders at the moment of receiving the Prajnaparamita teachings. And we also have an example of the concentration mudra. So one of the beings who is receiving the teachings of Prajnaparamita and will transmit them is in a profound state of meditation at the same time. And that is all being told to us. We can read it if we have the grammar of mudras. And moving on to one of the last mudras is the wish granting mudra, Varada. Vara is kind of classically, it's translated as boons, but a vara is any good thing that someone wants, like a favor, like petitions, like permission, like goods, and da is giving or giver. So varada is the granting of wishes, granting of favors. So one way to translate it is wish granting. And so this is already telling us a lot about the figure who's being represented. This is a compassionate, generous figure who will grant permission, favors, but they're endowed with the authority and the power to give permission, petitions, or goods. So it's signaling those two very key pieces of what Buddhist sacred figures are and do for us. Tibetan translates the term for this mudra as gesture of supreme generosity, just for those who might be more familiar with that term. That is because vara can mean what is sought after, what is the choice, piece of art or something that is therefore supreme or most desired, supreme. And generosity should be dana, but it's varada. It's a nice way to think of what that gesture is doing. That the figure that we're observing is emanating towards us their supreme generosity. And so let's see what it looks like. And again, let's just try out this gesture. Our fingers are facing downward towards the person who's in front of us. And palm is towards them. So this is like we have just released something towards them. You can feel that I'm offering you this, right? And so that is what we are seeing when we see the palm down. So this Buddha, we can already recognize his left hand is in the posture of meditation, and the right hand is in Varada. Seeing that a little bit closer. And again, we'll see a lot of variety of ways that that hand can be represented, the thumb away, fingers together, fingers curled, but it's that basic posture. We saw earlier Amitabha descending from Sukhavati. He's descending to grant the wish of someone to be reborn in his realm. And this is it's almost a genre of East Asian painting, to paint Buddha Amitabha descending from Sukhavati when someone who's dying is calling on him to escort him to his realm, the prayer to be reborn in Sukhavati. This is depicting the moment in which Buddha is responding to that request. And so it is very natural that there is the Varada mudra, the wish granting mudra. You want to be reborn in my realm, I'm granting your wish right now. And there we see a lot of slightly different way of representing the hands. Very commonly, Tara, who we supplicate and ask for many favors and goods and requests and petitions, has also her right hand on her knee. We can see it's unlike the earth touching mudra, which would be similar, but the palm would be facing us. The palm is facing outward, and she is granting wishes. And just some of the images of Tara, we will start to see that is very often, Tara is telling us, I accept your request. I am here saying yes. I just wanted to put this in here. Maybe it's a surprise that Tara was also revered and depicted in Sri Lanka in the 8th century. Here she is also granting wishes, standing figure. And here, this is one of the 21 Taras who is literally holding the wish-granting vase. So her hand is in the wish-granting gesture, holding the wish-granting vase. And just to note, Tara does not always make the wish-granting gesture. Her fingers are not pointing downwards with the hand forwards. This is a different gesture, which we'll look at right now. That is the abhaya or security gesture. So abhaya, means without or free from. And bhaya is a very interesting word that means both dangers and the fear of those dangers. The fear that we feel in the presence of dangers and danger itself, which is very interesting that one word describes both of those aspects of the experience. And so abhaya means free of fear or freed from fear, protected, or a state of security. Also can mean fearlessness. And the Abhaya Mudra then is the gesture of protection, gesture of granting security, and gesture of conferring fearlessness. And so sacred figures protect from dangers and fears. They can take away our fear, and they can also protect us against external dangers. So again, figures that are endowed with this important combination of power and kindness. That's being signaled by the fact that they're offering that to who sees it. And they're kind of two different, this just for some of the stylistic conventions. The Indian style tends to be more like stop, like I am stopping whatever is a danger that could protect you. And it's often a little bit more kind of softened and slightly turned inward in Tibetan and East Asia. So let's look at some images. Here's the Abhaya Mudra, very early piece from Mathura. And there the hand, it's just almost like a stop. These are all from the Indian subcontinent, looking pretty much like that. And we have here from Myanmar, also, but with the fingers separate. And Tara her gesture is a variant of that. Her hand is up. We see again the red palm. This is definitely carrying on that tradition of making the palm red. But her hand is up. So it can be gestures, mudras, can be quite subtle. I'm tending to show the sort of more obvious ones so that we can get the visuals, but we can also see it much softer gesture. So she is offering protection to that monk. And so that is a kind of whirlwind tour, but I hope that there were enough examples that the sense of what this art is communicating can come across. Let's just put our hand up to have that last sense and just feel that with this gesture, we would be communicating to someone either stop, I'm protecting these other people against what you're doing, which we'll see in a moment in another work of art, but also it's okay. It's okay. You're safe. You're safe here. It's okay. You're safe. You're secure here. This is a safe place. So that when we are looking at Buddhist art, where the Buddha or Tara or whatever the central figure is making this gesture, we can receive that communication and understand we're being offered a safe space. That is generating a place of security for us. And so these are just some of the sort of ways to receive the communication that the art is offering to us. And it's also a way to weave ourselves into this vast transgenerational, transmillennial, transgeographic community of Buddhist practitioners who we're all doing our thing. We're all responding to the local conditions, the social conditions, to the moment that we're living in, but we're sharing. We're sharing this visual idiom. We're sharing the experiences that it makes possible. So I want to take a 10-minute break, and then we'll have a tour of the art. Maybe just briefly before we break, or no, I'll do that when we get back. Let's have a 10-minute break. And for those of you who are here, I really encourage you to walk around the building and look at the incredible collection and variety of art that's here, and start looking at the mudras, start looking at the hand gestures, familiarizing yourself with it. You will now know what is being communicated by that work of art, and just start that experience of receiving the communication that's being offered. And if you want to go up the stairs, there are the 5 Dhyani Buddhas, there are the 5 Buddha families. Each Buddha makes a different mudra, has a different color, has a different direction, cardinal direction, and has a different mudra associated with it. So you can go up the stairs and sort of, oh, okay, locate yourselves. And we'll be back here at 11:25 our time, which is in Uruguay. It's the same time?
1 hour
Behind? Anyway, in 10 minutes. Hi. So this is like kind of now the prize for listening to the first half. We have surrounding us in this space, along with the more traditional Tibetan images, we have a collection of Buddhist art painted by Latin American and Iberian practitioners and artists. And this is the result of a juried art competition that the community that I serve and that Karya is also part of and also serves. We held an art competition partly because we are in a process of really thinking about the way our transmission and practice of Buddhism relates to the earth, and partly as a process of making Dharma less foreign. So there's something subtle that happens when all the images and all the visual references come from a very different visual culture. They're not familiar. You don't see yourself so easily in them. It's not that subtle, right? It's not that subtle, okay? And so how do we imagine Buddhism as belonging to our world and our earth? And so the juried art competition, which was made possible for us to actually award prizes to artists by a grant from Calliopeia Foundation that wanted to support this. And so we had a, you know, a call for art. I offered a course in Buddhist art with actually with everything that we just went through, I think, and quite a bit more over the course of a few months, so that when people are representing Buddhist images, they're not just plopping a Buddhist image into a you know, a Latin American or, you know, Andalusian environment, but that they are participating in a dialogue with the visual tradition. They don't need to adopt everything very slavishly exactly as it was, but they need to be familiar with it because we are part of a large transnational community. And also because we don't want to participate in what so often happens with images of Buddha in the West, which is it is really just cultural appropriation. You take the image of a Buddha to signal peace and you put it in front of your spa or your whatever. And or use, you know, anyway, I won't get into that. I think we've probably, if we've looked at Buddhist images, we understand that very often they're completely decontextualized visually and in terms of their meanings, and they're used in some sort of commercial or marketing context that doesn't honor any of the relationship building that we've just been thinking about. And so to ensure that that didn't happen, everyone who created art had, you know, gone through a process of learning about what the visual idiom was, what some of the conventions were, so that they could make references to it. And I think in this, the guided tour, so I'm going to walk around in a moment and we'll spend some time with more pieces than others because some of them require maybe a little bit more contextualization, but you are very much invited to go back and spend time with each of the pieces and let it speak to you through the idiom that is now a little bit more familiar, hopefully. And so I should start with your computer then. Karia is going to manage the slides for everyone online so that you can join the tour. So when I'm talking, when I'm walking around and pointing to the images here, you will see an image of them online so you can engage as well. And so here, and the order in which the tour will take place is not like first prize, second prize, third prize, because we arrange them. We had Andrea from Uruguay here to help set up, who's an artist, and was saying, well, look at how these shapes and colors combine. Wouldn't it be better? So we've arranged it in principles that don't honor first, second, third, but these are all really amazing pieces of art, and I don't think we really need to go in that order. Here is the first prize. This image was painted by a young woman from Mexico. This is white Tara, and it's called Codex Tara. And this is the title itself, and also in very many ways visually, this is making reference to the pre-Columbian Mayan visual and written languages. So the codices, there are only 3, I believe, extant, were scribed by Mayans before the conquest, the colonialization process, the conquest and colonialization by Spain. And this one in particular was removed from that context and taken to Spain. It is kind of the most important piece in the Museum of the Americas in Madrid. And we will see, so if we place them side by side, we will see both, there's some elements in the color palette that are giving some echo to the codices, but especially we're going to see many, many different visual echoes. And as we start to look at this art, so we see that we'll see a visual conversation. Sorry for the spin. We'll see visual conversation, so that the piece that this artist created, Tara Codex, is in visual conversation with a Mesoamerican artistic tradition. And it is not simply Mayan. For people who are steeped in the Mexican and Mesoamerican culture, there will be lots of different conventions that are familiar. So it is a recognizably, comfortably Mesoamerican visual space that you are entering. And as we look at it next, we'll see it is also recognizably Buddhist and in recognizable visual conversation with Buddhism. And so I want to invite everyone to come with me and let's look at it up close. So this is the artwork here, and everyone online can continue to see it. So one thing that I didn't mention that I'm quite happy about is that the artwork in this show, the artwork that received prizes, represents artists born in the 50s, in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, in the 90s, and in the year 2000. So it's very intergenerational representation here. And this is Atsire, who lives in Mayan territory in Merida, was born in 1992. So she's on the younger spectrum. And so if we look, sorry, I want to match the slides. So, oh wait, I wasn't done with my part. Sorry. So can you just walk us through the slides, Karya? So move to the next slide. So this is one of the ways we can see that figure who is offering her a flower. So if we look, yeah, perfect. So if we look at her hands, she's not painting the palms red completely, but because this is well, for whatever reason, she's painting the nails red and the fingertips red. This is white Tara, who has wheels on the palm of her hands and on the soles of her feet. So instead of making a literal wheel, we have a red dot and we have the red fingernails. This is a very clear conversation with Buddhist visual language, not following it slavishly, but she's in conversation with it. This artwork is in conversation with it. And then, so Tara in her left hand usually holds a flower that is budding, flowering, and fruit. Here, instead of herself holding a flower, she has a very clearly Mesoamerican figure in her hand offering a flower to Tara. So she's playing with the idiom. This is not cultural appropriation. This is conversation. And then if you move to the next slide, the other thing, okay, sorry, go back one. So what we also see, and we can see it here up close, this Tara is represented with a world on her body. Her body is holding the earth. Now, this has some important implications for our earth-based Buddhism, but if we go to the next image, there is also a visual tradition in Buddhism of depicting Buddhas with the world on their body. And this visual idiom is called cosmic Buddhas. And anyone who's in the Washington, D.C. area, don't fail to go to the Freer Gallery, which is part of the Smithsonian. It is a magnificent piece. It's larger than life size, and it has just got the whole world on its body. Then if you go to the next slide, you had it a little bit closer. And then one more representation of this before we move on is I think you might want to, you can switch to just showing one page at a time if you want to make it easier to move. So that those are the route. Can you zoom out a little bit? Can you show us the whole slide? No, zoom out. Show us the whole, yeah. So those are the 6 realms depicted on the Buddha's body. And so she's echoing that Buddhist tradition, but if you want to come closer and look, what is the world that is on her body? It is our world. It is a recognizably Mesoamerican ecosystem. There are, so from across Mexico, there are nopales, prickly pear cactus, there's saguaro cactus. The animals are also animals that you can see across that part of the Americas. There's corn that's growing among the plants, and people are doing the things that people do on the earth. There's harvest happening. There's appreciation of flowers happening. There's harmony among the species. Different species are being represented. And if you want to go down to the next, I think it might work if you configure, yeah, exactly like that, so people can see the whole page all at once. Keep going. We were just looking at that. No, go back to the one before that. Yeah, so let's just stay there for a moment. So if you come close here and look at what it's okay, just leave it just like it is, that's good. You see a woman who's breastfeeding. One thing to note, all the figures here on the earth are, according to the artist, or the artist explains that they are all female figures. So there's breastfeeding happening. Look at the mudra, look at the gesture of her right hand warding off the jaguar. So there's a jaguar that is very much of this ecosystem. And here, what is very interesting is that it is not a Buddha figure that is demonstrating the mudra of protection. She's recognizing that mothers protect their children, that we protect one another. And so it is completely appropriate to represent that through the same mudras that sacred figures would be representing. And it also is a reminder that it's not just the Buddhas who are functioning like Buddhas for us and for one another. The other piece here that is really very powerful is that the placement of the earth on her body is placing an echo or giving a reading of White Tara as an earth goddess. Yeah. 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 That I think she has a particular relationship to White Tara from how she spoke of it. So that was our amazing first prize. And I'm going to walk around and just point out a few things about the other pieces and then really invite you to come back and see how many other elements are both recognizably Buddhist, the sun and the moon, and recognizably from her culture. Yeah, yeah, it's okay. I don't have an answer. So it's just, I don't know, but let's keep moving. And I want to walk everyone through it because I know we said that we'd finish by 12, but then let's come back and spend more time with everything. And so we'll move a little bit quickly past this one. This was our third prize by an artist from Spain, from the Andalusian region from Spain. And so the architectural elements are very clearly showing Moorish influence. So he's bringing together the Moorish, the Spanish, and the Buddhist cultural lives in conversation here. And this is, again, we can see from the mudra, the Buddha at the moment of awakening here. So when we start looking, we know what's being expressed. He's offering protection. Buddha's offering protection to this space. The earth goddess is projected in a way that reminds us maybe of the Virgin Mary, and she's offering her protection And she's, instead of coming up from the earth, she's encompassing the whole space. So
This reminds me of another one I saw where they were using natural dyes from plants and whatever.
It-
Did he do that?
I want, I don't think so. I don't know, but someone else did. Yeah, yeah. I'll mention that when we get to that one. So this was the 6th prize, and this brings Tara to an ecosystem where she might not ordinarily be imagined. This is from Gabriela Tosello. I should mention the names of the artists. This was Juan Miguel Bueno Montilla. And this is from the heart. So she's, again, we look at the mudras. She's offering protection to the coral reef. Yeah. Full of life.
Is it
and
also
this-
supposed to be touching the ground?
She's also touching the ground. Yes.
Is it on, Kim? Sorry, you can always open.
If she's, yes, that is the earth touching mudra in her other hand, in the water. Maybe the water touching mudra in that case. And this really quite amazing. I mean, they're all amazing. This amazing piece called the pollinator, or maybe we would have to say pollinatress, because the Spanish name for the work is definitely in feminine, has, I want to come back to that. I want to conclude with this one. So let's move past it. We're much, you're way off. Yeah. Yeah. So you need to. This was the 2nd prize. This was by the youngest artist, Pedro Guadalupe Felix Aguilar. It's called The Earth is My Witness. And this is, in part, he was 23 when he made the art. It was made 2 years ago. So Pedro, along with being an artist, also does a lot of environmental work. He has a project to protect trees, document, protect. He had a very important thesis on the moral importance of trees. And these are a specific tree that is familiar to Mexico. It's called ahuehuete in the Nahuatl language. That's how it's known in Mexico. In English, I think it's called the Montezuma bald cypress. So these are cypresses. But it's very much known as the Nahuatl. The Nahuatl is a language from central Mexico, the Mexica. And in Nahuatl, it's ahuehuetl, but it's ahuehuete in Spanish. And so he's in a forest of those trees, and the young figure here is the earth goddess. So we see here the Buddha's hand is in the chest, the earth touching mudra. This is making reference to a narrative tradition from Thailand and Southeast Asia that tells very differently. It goes into much more detail, and it tells a particular story about what the earth goddess did when she was called upon. In that narrative tradition, the understanding is that over all of the past lives of the Buddha, he was leaving his efforts were being registered on the earth. The earth was witness and is witness to everything that we do. And there's a tradition in India and also in Southeast Asia, when you make a major donation, when you do a very important good deed, to dedicate that deed, you pour some water down your hand onto the earth. And so the idea of commemorating good deeds by pouring water into the earth, the idea was that the good deeds of the Buddha were held in the earth as water over many, many eons of lifetimes. And in the moment of calling on the earth as his witness, she was saying, I was there when you did all of these deeds. I have all the water that you sprinkled on the earth by your good deeds over all time. And she wrings her hair and releases a river that carries off Mara's army. And that is what allows Buddha to complete his step into enlightenment in peace. And so this is a story, I tell the story a lot, so it's not that surprising that they're depicting it, because it's one of the narratives, one of the few narratives that really shows the agency of the earth in that moment. And so here is the earth wringing her hair out to make possible, to participate in Buddha's moment of enlightenment. And we also have on this side, there are 3 women at the different stages of life. The earth is presented as youthful. This pregnant woman is explained by the artist to be Prajnaparamita, the mother of all Buddhas, pregnant with wisdom and compassion and awakening. And this woman is Julieta Casimiro, who's an indigenous woman from the Mazateca community in Mexico, who was one of the 13 grandmothers, so Indigenous Grandmothers Council. She's passed away now, but that is a depiction of her. And on this side, it's a group of women chasing out the illegal loggers in the state of Michoacan. And then there's Buddha emerging as spirit of the forest, or so not dominating the space in the way that some other images will have him do. He's a very literally luminous presence there. And one thing that you can't see, when I first saw this, the first exhibition that we did was in Mexico City, and when I first saw this live, I saw so many things that I didn't see on that, including the rays of light that Buddha is casting throughout the space. They're very subtle, and they don't quite come across in the image. Here, in the answer to the question about earth palettes, so the woman who made this painting, Jimena Maldonado Velázquez, who came to she was very surprised. She came to the opening in Mexico City, and she was surprised to see that so quickly the colors had changed. If you look on the screen, you can see what the original colors were. She took that photo to send it in to be considered. She made the pigments herself with natural pigmentation from the earth. And as is the way of all things, it is changing. And if you go to the next slide, there's some things here just before we move on to point out. So one of the features of this is the use of what might not be that easily legible. The hands coming up, we see them in lots of different cultures. For her, one of the important inspirations that the Dharma gave her with a strong activist commitment was the transition of understanding activism from being a raised fist to being an open palm. So the gesture of offering fearlessness and security. So that is represented around her, but also if we come down to the next slide, you can come here and see it live or watch it there on screen, either way. And if you don't mind leaving the whole image visible on the screen, okay. Before you zoom in that much, don't zoom in so much, please. You can I think it's okay if you just leave it, the whole slide as it is, and not move around so much, and people can explore it themselves visually. So we have an urban scene here on this side. We have a bowl with the offering jewels. We have the idea that you can become a Buddha doing your meditation in your apartment, in your building, by having your meditation guided online, you can learn to become enlightened in that way. It's a recognizably sort of, I think, Latin American urban scape, with the barbed wire and the clothes drying up and a satellite hanging from the tree. She's also very specifically including people who live on the street, unhoused people, whose Buddha nature is being revealed by their loving care of street dogs, their adopting of street dogs. That this is her. She gave an incredible guided tour of the painting herself, and I'm just taking up some things that she mentioned. And then the pollution on the right, and women being driven deeper into the woods. So struggles and also flourishing, the flourishing of Buddha nature. So let's move on to the fourth prize, which I think in this room stands out for its joyful colors. And the artist is online with us. What time is it? Do we have time to ask? Okay, fine. So Lula Paz has presented this world that is compositionally very classic Buddhist. Buddha's in the center. There's his community, which 4 nuns, 1 layperson would be familiar to people from our community. There's a monarch butterfly on his shoulder, and there's a volcano in the background. So I want to just invite you to come in and take a look, because this image in particular rewards a careful, slow unpacking. There's a lot that reveals itself with a little bit of watching. But maybe one detail to point out that's quite striking is that the Buddha, the right hand is in the left hand, which we see on the right side of the screen, is in the image of protection. And the right hand, that is earth touching mudra. Sometimes there is some depictions where he's actually touching the earth with his palm down on the earth. It's very uncommon, but it is there. So if we look at it, the earth that the Buddha is touching is Turtle Island. That is a turtle. That is Turtle Island. He's touching our earth. He's touching the earth where we live. And if just while we have that image up, just as an example of what you start to see as you're slowly engaging with it, there's a frog hidden there among the foliage, just as frogs tend to be. So I invite you to come back and look at this piece. And then this won the 5th prize by Elena Gonzalez Saez. This is called Mandala Rakusu. Mandala, I think we know, is the space, is a sacred space configured generally around a Buddhist figure. Mandala, I was like, to give a 1-sentence explanation of mandala is a bad idea. But I'm just going to assume that you have a reference for the term mandala, okay? Rakusu is the tradition in Japanese Buddhism where monastics or priests will make their own garments by sewing together patches, discrete patches, rather than one piece of cloth. And so this is a patchwork, but the patches that she's bringing together are drawings that she did over many years of her life as an artist. And this is one of the things that we're thinking about if we want to have a less patriarchal, one dominant figure centered understanding of Buddhist practice. having a big center Buddha in the center and the smaller people on the side and other people outside the fence is maybe not the best visual configuration. So she has decentered the central figure, and that central figure is herself. Okay, that is a small self-portrait of herself meditating. And so we have there's definitely signs of human presence, but humans are not dominating this space. There's lots of foliage and life. This is another one that really rewards spending some time in front of it. And there you can see her seated in front of a body of water behind maybe a tree. You can see part of the trunk of the tree, and she's meditating out. She's not in the center of her life. Right? Rakusu is the term for the Japanese patchwork robe. So this is a rakusu, a mandala that is also a rakusu. It's not an ordered. So this is one of the things that we might have noticed when we were looking through the Buddhist art. It is a very ordered universe. Everything is symmetrical. Everything is balanced. It's left, right, center. Things are spatially organized. It's a very ordered universe. This is not so ordered. This is a little bit closer to life. So she's in conversation in a very different way with Buddhist visual idioms. Then our next piece, our next.
I just wanted to ask if it's all right for us later to take pictures of these?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And I also want to draw your attention to on the signage that we have, there are the Instagram or Facebook accounts of the artists, so you can see more of their work. And a couple of them don't actually have Instagram accounts, so we have their email in case you wanted to be in touch with them. Then the next piece you can see here is Buddha gestating the Americas. This is another piece that I think I'm going to leave for you to engage with. It's another one that I think standing in front of and allowing it to speak to you, understanding that Buddhist art is created with your experience being anticipated as a central focus, and thinking of Buddha is touching the earth. So touching the earth and gestating the Americas at the same time. What is being communicated by bringing those two gestures and two elements together visually? The corn being such a quintessential plant of the Americas that has spread everywhere. And then I know we're out of time, so I'm gonna just walk us over to The Pollinator by Meme Luna, who I was told is preferring now to be called Merce Luna, she's online, that is beautiful. Hola, Merce. So this incredible piece, I think you might want to come and walk from the side to see the way the honey, the texture of the honey dripping down. But I wanted to conclude our time reading a poem. So she is not just an artist, but also a poet, and she created a descriptive poem that gives us a tour of her painting. And she starts at the bottom. Alas, ignorance. If the Dharma tastes bitter to you, it is only because of your craving. The hasty ego bites the orange fruit without peeling it. Discern, just as one must twist an orange to squeeze out all its juice. Eat each teaching like this fruit. O ginkgo, You cover the earth with your golden mantle, silver apricot, tree of 40 shields, living fossil, natural survivor of the nuclear bomb. Let us bow before this tree of patient wisdom, you who help us memorize all the sutras. Inspire us, golden carp, who sails against the current through the rivers, coloring their waters. May we, like you, overcome with persevering courage the waterfalls of fear and doubt. May we not settle, but emerge victorious in the face of adversity. O peacock, symbol of the awakened warrior, may we be like you who transforms the poison of the mind into peaceful beauty. Oh, may we be like you and transform into fertilizer all weeds that sprout from the seeds of ignorance, contempt, and attachment. O heart that dissolves duality with the equanimous light of compassion. O heart that sleepless like a great sun are illuminated wisdom, that on the middle path like a great sunflower unfolds upright. Encourage us, resilient butterfly that joyfully flutters. You who know how to transform heaviness into lightness, encourage us to transcend all entanglements, all the limiting boundaries that the mind creates. O tireless worker, without you, life wouldn't be life here on earth. So small and powerful. May we purify ourselves with the nectar of your honey. Following your example, may we be generous pollinators. May we all see ourselves as flowers, sharing ourselves, being of benefit. Thank you all so much. We're going to let our community online engage a little bit. Oh, Elena is also here. So we have Merce. There's Merce on bottom. There's Elena Gonzalez. There's Mirta Arial, Lula Paz. So we have half of the artists are here. That is amazing. I wonder if any of you want to, si alguna de ustedes, las artistas, quieren comentar algo, decir algo, expresar algo, yo les traduzco. Feliz. I told them if they want to say anything, they should be. Ah, si alguien habla inglés. Ah, sí, desde Canadá. Francés no puedo traducir, pero español a lo mejor sí. Elena.
Hello. I'm very pleased and honored to be
We're
here.
not hearing, no te escuchamos.
¿Me oís ahora?
Sí, ahora sí te escuchamos.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored and pleased to be here. And I have been listening to your enlightening chat and your magnificent words about all the Buddhist art and about our artworks. And And I'm very emocionada. Sorry. Oh, my English
Moved.
is not so oxidated.
She's very moved.
Yes. And I only
Mandala
want
Rakusu.
to send greetings and big kisses and embraces for everybody and for my colleagues on the contest on the art contest.
Mhm.
And thank you so much to everybody, and especially to you.
Thank you so much, Elena, for your incredibly moving piece. Mm. Helena's the
If you
artist.
have some
Mandala Rakusu.
curiosity, sorry, no, I'm just saying bye. But if you have any curiosity or anything, I can tell you. But
Yeah, any questions about Mandala Rakusu? Let's give people a moment to think up their questions in case they have any. ¿Alguien más? Mirta? Merce? Lula?
Gracias, Damchö. Solo agradecer muchísimo
I just want to thank very
Gracias.
much.
Hola.
¿Nada más esto? ¿Algo más? Mirta.
Sí, soy Mirta Arial de Argentina. Para mí es un profundo honor haber participado y haber podido mostrar un poco de lo que aprendí en ese curso, que aconsejo que cualquier artista o no se involucre en él, porque uno guarda una profundidad y una posibilidad de comprender lo magnífico de la historia de cada movimiento, porque yo antes veía
Espero no voy a poder acordarme de todo esto. I'm Mirta Arial from Argentina, and it is an honor to have participated in this competition. And sorry, I got distracted. Just give me a moment. Alguien me estaba haciendo una pregunta y se me distraje. And I wanted to recommend to any artist, whether Buddhist or not, to take the course on art, that it presents the richness of the Buddhist history and visual idiom. Sí, adelante. Más o menos espero que lo capté.
Todo está bien, todo está bien.
Y Mirta, ya que yo no expliqué mucho de tu obra, ¿hay algo que quisieras comentar de tus intenciones, de tu visión, de lo que quisiste comunicar? I'm asking her if she'd like to say something about what she communicated. Can you put that image on the screen?
La obra tiene mucho que ver con el impacto que me produjo a mí el gesto de tocar la tierra.
The work had a lot to do with what the earth-touching gesture signified for me, what it meant for me.
Y quise involucrar con los escasísimos elementos que tenía, porque eso lo conté cuando mandé mi obra. Tenía muy pocos elementos, pero tenía unas ganas tremendas de agradecer. O sea, la obra es eso, es el gesto de tocar la tierra y la realidad de que se conecten profundamente América y toda la cultura que trae el budismo.
I wanted, it was centered on the earth-touching gesture. There, you'll see that there are very few elements in this different in this image. I used very few elements, but I wanted to be able to represent how all that connects the Americas and the rich Buddhist tradition. You see the Bodhi leaves on top and the corn on the bottom.
Yes. Yes. Bueno, y por eso la producción, ¿no? Los frutos, todo lo que América nos trae como surgiendo de este contacto pleno. Gracias.
Everything that the Americas, the fruits that the Americas brings us, that comes from this profound contact.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Mirta. Merce. Ah,
Could I ask a question?
Ajá.
Helena's work?
Antes de que hables, Mirta, hay una pregunta para Elena. There's a question for Helena about Mandala Rakusu.
I wondered if you could say more about the symbolism of this drawing and
We'll
this
have to
composite drawing.
just give a second for
Yeah.
Karya to pull that up online. Right, it's this one right here. Which one? The one with the
This
oh no,
drawing
es-
and this
este.
probably composite
Uh-huh.
drawing.
The two, the I don't know how to show you. The one that has feet emerging from a mouth or mask, and then to the left of that, the one that sort of looks like a mechanical something. Black and white drawing.
Yes, that's a mechanical, it's a robotic dog. I took it from a magazine or something like that. And it has to do with all the artificial intelligence and all the devices. And the other one, the one with the mask on top, I don't know if it's a mask, if it's a character wearing a mask, or if it's like a time eating someone. I'm not very clear about that. And it's quite difficult to talk about the symbolism, because this is trying to, when I work, I try to it's an experience, it's something I'm experiencing in that moment or during that part of my life. And I'm not using, it's part of my own universe in this in that moment. So it can be like a polysemic figure. I don't know if I'm making sense with my words. I don't know.
Absolutely. Yes, that makes perfect sense.
Thank you.
So let's hear from Merce, and then I'm getting the signals that we need to wrap up. Venga, Merce.
Hola a todos,
Hello,
a
everyone.
todos, todas, todes.
To
Muy feliz de estar
all,
aquí con todos vosotros.
very happy to be here with all of you.
Me regocijo de toda la
I'm
belleza, de todas
rejoicing
las
from all the
obras
beauty
de
of
los
all the works of
compañeros
art of my companions, my colleagues.
y cada vez más me siento muy feliz
And I feel happier and happier
de tener este poder
to
de la
have
creatividad,
the power of creativity,
de sentir que es una
to
herramienta
feel that it is a tool
que puede llegar a ser una herramienta de paz,
that can become an instrument of peace,
que es un ejemplo de amor,
that it's an example of love,
de tolerancia,
of tolerance,
de resiliencia,
the resilience,
de poder transformador.
of the power of transformation.
Es un espejo del alma
It's a mirror of the soul,
y tantas cosas.
and many, many things.
Y creo que los
And I
artistas
believe that artists
y todos en general
and everyone in general
somos portadores de esta creatividad
are carriers of this creativity.
y entre todos nuestra
Among
misión
all of us, our mission
es abrir los ojos
is to open our eyes
a la belleza,
to the beauty,
a la belleza más elevada del amor,
to the highest beauty, which is love,
al amor a todas las formas
love in all its forms, to all forms,
y a todas las diferentes maneras
and all the
de
different ways
manifestarse el poder
to
creativo.
manifest all the different ways that creative power manifests itself.
Así que nos tenemos que regocijar todos
So we have to rejoice, all of us. We can all
de tener
rejoice
este
to have
poder
this power
de crear y transformar.
to create and to transform.
está en nuestras manos.
It's in our hands
Transformar nuestras vidas
to
y,
transform our lives
y la vida de
and
todos
the
entre
life
todos.
of all among all.
Ujú.
Mm. What a perfect way to conclude. Thank you, Merce. Thank you, Mirta. Thank you, Lula. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone, for coming together in this space to be those who receive and who experience the impact of their work.